There is a pattern that shows up in almost every growing company I work with. The business is doing well, revenue is increasing, the team is expanding, and at some point, someone looks at the volume of incoming communication, the calls, the emails, the appointment requests, the follow-up messages, and decides it's time to automate. That decision on its own is correct. The problem is what happens next. What you're watching right now is an AI clone, a digital version of me, Ronald. I build and deploy AI automation systems for real businesses, insurance companies, accounting firms, medical clinics, through my company Datawonder. I use AI every single day, not theoretically. I build it, I test it, and I live with the consequences when it works and when it doesn't. This channel exists because most AI content either teaches you how to use a tool or makes predictions about the distant future. Neither of those things helps you run a business today. If that kind of grounded, specific analysis is useful to you, consider subscribing. No pressure. Now, back to the pattern. When businesses decide to scale their communication with AI, they almost always start in the right place. There's a real problem. The volume of routine inbound contact has grown faster than the team. Someone is spending 3 hours a day answering the same 5 questions. Appointment scheduling is eating time that should go toward actual work. Follow-up messages are slipping. The human cost is visible, and it's concrete, so they look at automation, and they find that the tools exist. Voice agents, email automation, chatbots, scheduling systems. The technology is genuinely capable. The demos look convincing. The decision to move forward gets made. And that is usually where the structured conversation should start, and almost never does. The assumption at this point is that communication is a volume problem, that if you can handle more of it faster, you solved it. More throughput, same quality. That's the framing. It sounds reasonable. It is wrong. Communication inside a business is not just a throughput problem. It is a representation problem. Every message that goes out, every call that gets answered, every automated response that reaches a client, that is the business speaking. It carries intent. It sets expectations. It shapes the relationship. When you scale communication without defining what that representation should look like, you are not solving a volume problem. You are amplifying an undefined signal. Let me make that specific. A medical clinic decides to deploy a voice agent for inbound appointment scheduling. The agent handles calls well. It books appointments. It reduces the workload on the front desk significantly. Then, a patient calls with a question that isn't exactly about scheduling. It's somewhere in between part scheduling, part clinical concern, part general anxiety about a procedure. The voice agent follows its logic. It answers what it can, attempts to redirect what it can't, and the patient hangs up feeling like they weren't heard. Nobody at the clinic designed that outcome. Nobody wanted it. But nobody defined the boundary either. Nobody decided in advance. This is what our communication sounds like when a patient is uncertain. This is where the automation ends and the human begins. This is the standard we hold ourselves to, regardless of volume. The agent filled the gap with its defaults, and the defaults weren't wrong technically. They just weren't right for that clinic, for that patient, for that moment. That is what scaling without structure actually looks like. Not a system failure, a definition failure. If this kind of analysis is useful to you, a like helps the channel reach more people. That's all. Now let's go one level deeper, because the appointment scenario is just the surface. The deeper issue is that most businesses do not have a clear internal picture of their own communication standards before they start automating. They have habits. They have informal norms. They have good people who intuitively handle edge cases well. But that knowledge is not written down. It is not transferable. It exists in the heads of a few experienced staff members who learned it over time. When you automate without extracting that knowledge first, you do not preserve it. You bypass it. The automation handles the volume, the implicit knowledge, the judgment calls, the tone adjustments, The moments where a human would have recognized that something needed a different response, that knowledge gets left behind. And for a while, nobody notices. The routine cases are handled correctly. The volume is down. The team has more capacity. The metrics look fine. The cases that expose the gap are the non-routine ones. The client who calls 3 times in a week because something is unclear, but doesn't say it directly. The insurance policyholder who asks a question that sounds procedural, but is actually driven by financial stress. The accounting client who submits a document late and sends a follow-up message that reads as curt, but is actually a signal that something has gone wrong. Experienced humans recognize these patterns. They adjust. They flag them internally. An automated system, deployed without that context, does not. This is the second-order effect that most businesses miss when they evaluate communication automation. The first-order effect is visible and positive: volume handled, time saved, capacity freed. The second-order effect is slower and quieter: the gradual erosion of the quality signals that humans used to catch, because those humans are no longer in the loop often enough to catch them. The business does not experience this as a system failure. It experiences it as a vague deterioration. Client relationships that used to feel solid start to feel transactional. Retention numbers shift slightly. Referral patterns change. Nothing catastrophic. Nothing traceable to a single cause. But the cause is traceable. It is the gap between the communication volume that got automated and the communication standards that never got defined. I work with companies in regulated industries: insurance, healthcare, accounting. These are sectors where communication carries compliance weight, not just relationship weight. The stakes of an undefined standard are higher here. An automated message that creates a wrong expectation around a policy term, or an appointment confirmation that doesn't capture a critical detail about a procedure, these are not just relationship problems. They can become operational or legal ones, which is why structure has to come before scale. Every time. Structure means knowing what your communication is supposed to do, for whom, under which conditions, and where the boundaries of automation should sit. It means extracting the implicit knowledge from your experienced staff before it gets bypassed. It means defining the handoff point where the automated system ends and a human being picks up before you deploy. It also means building the feedback loop, because communication standards are not static. What worked last year may not be right for the volume you are handling today or the clients you are serving now. The structure has to be maintained, not just installed. The companies that scale communication well are not the ones with the most sophisticated tools. They are the ones that took the time to answer a set of unglamorous questions first. What are we actually trying to communicate? What does good look like in a difficult case? Who owns the quality of this interaction? What do we do when the system produces an outcome we didn't intend? Those questions feel slow. They feel like they are delaying automation. They are actually the work. Everything else is implementation. The risk of scaling communication without structure is not that your system breaks. It is that your system works exactly as designed, and your design was incomplete. That is a harder problem to see and a harder problem to fix, because by the time you recognize it, the gap has already been scaled. Take a moment and think about your own business, or a business you know well. Where is communication currently handled by habit rather than definition? Where does an experienced person make a judgment call every day, and nobody has ever written down what that judgment is based on? That is exactly the place where structure needs to exist before automation touches it. If you're working through this kind of challenge and want to think through what that structure should look like for your specific situation, you can book a free call with me. The link is right below this video. I'm happy to take a look at what you're dealing with.